are well known enough in industry to actually, people might have paid attention to the Greenhouse podcast or something like
I
that.
hope
So
so. I hope so.
yeah, maybe one of these days to be a fully fledged media sort of mini group.
Media mogul.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
The
All
greenhouse
right, everyone.
cinematic universe.
You know what? With all the meta glasses these days coming in and doing crazy things, why should Greenhouse not inhabit those spaces? Um, okay, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air, bringing it to you. It's episode 332. This is a special, folks. You might notice this is not Friday and it's not 2 p.m. in the afternoon. We're actually doing it at a different time because we specifically wanted to talk about a topic with principally our US audience. So welcome everybody to the show. We're going to be talking about candidate ghosting and how the job application tsunami that we're all experiencing is no excuse for our duty of care to the people who are looking for work. We cannot adopt the attitude of hostility to the people who are looking for these opportunities, even though we know that we're getting crushed with the applicant flow coming in, particularly with AI-powered sort of candidate behavior and even some fraudulent behavior. But very, very important that we understand how it works from a CX perspective. Okay, folks, let me do some sound checks before we keep going on. Thank you, Stephen, to preempt that. We're loud and clear on Crowdcast, so no need to do those checks. We are live streaming this on LinkedIn Live, though. Multiple LinkedIn Lives are going live for us right now. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, do let me know whether you can hear and see me okay. It looks like I'm live and fine. Kevin, I hope you're fine as well. I just got an email from you. Yes, you are. If you're on the Crowdcast link, you should be there, my friend. So yes, check your email. The link I sent you on the Crowdcast, that's where you're going to be. Okay, I think everyone can hear us fine, which is great stuff. And my co-host today is one and only Daniel Chait. Daniel, of course, industry famous. But let me, why don't you introduce yourself, Daniel? Who are you? What it is you do? And we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, Hunk. Industry famous is another way of saying that most people have never heard of me. But if you're in the industry, hopefully you've heard of Greenhouse, hiring platform. That's our mission is to help every company in the world be great at hiring. We started in 2012, so we're here in our 14th year of business, serving thousands of companies around the world. And this idea of candidate tsunami, companies dealing with candidate overwhelm. And by the way, job seekers also facing problems getting jobs and the feeling like the market is not working for them is a topic near and dear to my heart, one I'm spending a lot of time thinking and talking about. So I think it's going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it here.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And Dan, you're the one actually stimulated this series because you were saying, you know what, it's actually really important at this moment where technology is changing behavior, that we as operators, builders of technology, people on the other side of the fence, we've got to get a grip as to what's going on and then see how we go forward. Let's set the scene with regard to the applicant increase. From your experience on aggregate of all of the customers that you're dealing with, I think tens of thousands of companies, what kind of volume of applicants have you seen over time? Can you give us any information on that, and what are people
Yeah,
experiencing now?
it's gone way up. So we look at application volume kind of per job, and that's basically doubled in the last couple of years. And then we look at application volume per recruiter. So if you think about it, companies are asking everyone to do more with less. Most people in the audience are probably hearing that in some form around their organizations. And so companies are, even as volumes are going up and even hiring is going up, they're not hiring more recruiters. And so application volume per recruiter is going up even more than that. And so that's a feeling of overwhelm in a very tangible, concrete way.
Yeah, I think that's really good metrics there. And folks, I mean, I'm sure you could validate this. Like, we're kind of like terrified of placing job ads now, or well, at least we're reconsidering it because it's like, you know what, we can't handle 1,000 applicants for this job. Like, it puts our team under stress. And if you haven't got your tech set up in order to deal with that, then you're just going to get a load of candidates that are upset with their experience, huge damage to candidate brand, really potential damage to morale to the recruiters as well. From a vendor point of view, has this situation led you to do anything on the product side to support sort of recruiters that are feeling this strain of the applicant volume?
Yeah, Hung, I would say of the, almost 14 years that we've been in business, I have heard more pull on this topic and more customer interest on this topic than almost anything else I can remember. It's truly been just on the forefront of everyone's mind. And so, in response to that, and thinking about what we could do for customers, we launched a product called Real Talent back in June, which is meant to be a comprehensive solution to cover issues of basically overwhelm, which include dealing with kind of spammy and low quality or low intention job applications, as well as to deal with the true fraud, ID misrepresentation, deep fakes, state sponsored action, all that kind of stuff. And so it's a big technology investment. It's quite holistic in terms of handling all these different components to it. But it's something that customers are, very, very interested in for sure.
How is it going to work? Is it stuff in the background? Like, do you filter people out before people see it, or is it a tool that the recruiter operator is going to have to use in some way?
Yeah, so you need there's a lot. It's a complicated landscape, both legally as well as candidate experience wise. And what we don't want to do is introduce barriers to job seekers or legal risks to employers. And so you have to be really careful about these things. And so generally speaking, the way it works is a few different things are happening. Number one is, as a hiring platform, we collect a lot of data and signal about a job applicant as they're coming through the process that we can use to make some assessments about risk. For example, what device that they're on, what location that they're in, how that maps to like where they say they are or what's on their profile. A lot of that can give us a good signal about this individual. That's number one. Number two is we do a lot of AI analysis about what's in the application materials, their resume, their cover letter, their background and skills versus what the company says that they're looking for. The job description, the interview scorecard, and then the company can calibrate how they want to weight these different skills. It's not just keywords, but actually like meaningfully like what matters to us. And then the AI in Real Talent can really bucket candidates as to how close of a match they are to what the customer is looking for. So they're not going to be like auto rejected by an AI. I think everyone's kind of nervous or worried about that for a bunch of reasons. But what we will do is help them kind of focus on who's most relevant to the job that you're posting. And then the third thing they'll do is an integration with Clear as an ID provider. So people may be familiar with Clear in the airports in the US, but Clear also has a mobile app that works in lots of places around the world. And basically, you take a selfie and it uses your face to identify you uniquely as a person. And that helps to cut down on kind of fraud and misrepresentation a bunch of different ways. And so it really is a kind of holistic set of things aimed at really making sure that you as an employer are spending your time efficiently and protecting yourself against risks. Also, so that the job seekers can stand out amongst all that noise as well, and they're not drowning in an endless sea, but that they can actually more efficiently connect to like the right job.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's not like an oppositional posture, it's a circular issue. So if you improve the information security, the fraud mitigation, you should actually improve the candidate experience because there's basically less fraudulent competitors that every applicant has to deal with.
It's part of what you're seeing. I mean, if you went to a deli and there were 2,000 people in line, you wouldn't think you'd get very good service, right? So there's no surprise that people apply to a job and they never hear back and they think I'm being ghosted. And what isn't visible to them is the stats that we've been talking about here. Like, well, they're usually behind hundreds or even thousands of people in line. And so clearing the room a little bit and making sure that the right people with the right skills are visible in the right places is helpful to job seekers.
Yeah, really interesting. To be clear, with Clear, is that now implemented into Greenhouse? So is it live, or is there a moment where you're going to switch it on?
It's in beta testing right now. As you can imagine, with technology like this, we want to make
Mhm.
sure that we've got lots of data and done lots of testing, including third-party bias audits that we're undergoing. So we're undergoing a lot of that rigorous testing right now, and the product will be available to customers in the beginning of the new year.
Yeah, fantastic. I'd love to see data on that because it'd be interesting to know, how many people do take the photo. There's going to be a drop-off rate. I'd be interested to know about the demographics of all those folks as well. So yeah, really interesting.
For sure.
Catherine, really good question. I'm sure Greenhouse are wrestling with exactly this issue because we do want equity and inclusion in all of this.
Yes.
But at the same time, we also have to be realistic. It's a trade-off, because we are introducing some additional friction into the flow. But I think it's necessary friction, given the fact that we're seeing the sort of behavior that we always feared would be the case. But there's simply no like penalty to using abusing even technology to try and improve your chances to getting in. So we have to protect our businesses. Recruiters are probably one of the highest risk functions in businesses, in my opinion, because we get a lot of inbound email, there are a lot of attachments in there, and we do a lot of downloads and opening files. Like we have to take some sort of cybersecurity on it. But I wonder whether you do want to answer the question from Catherine.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what you said is true, Hung. But to the question, like, it's absolutely top of mind for us, and one of the most important questions that we're focusing on is, how do we deploy this type of technology in a way that's safe and fair. And I think what's the question that the person is asking, how do we mitigate bias with image, is one of, but not the only question that we've been focused on as we think about how to deploy this fairly. So just I can say a little bit about that right now. Firstly is I think people often are focused on when you're doing image recognition with a computer. We've seen lots of times where that image recognition is imperfect and fails in particularly biased ways. People with darker skin, say, have had the experience where the hand dryer at the restroom doesn't recognize their skin, and things like that. And what we've come to see with the Clear technology is the problem of recognizing an individual face versus recognizing like a face in a crowd is very different and much less subject to bias, because it's really about the geometry of the face. So the technology in and of itself is inherently less biased. Secondly, is we're subjecting it nonetheless to very rigorous third-party audits, and we'll be publishing those regularly and providing that level of transparency. The third thing I'll say is that we've convened a board of outside paid advisors, specifically with a focus on inclusion and diversity, to address a whole range of issues, including what the questioner asked, but also issues of gender identity. Folks who are immigrants have questions about how their data is going to be treated, and even if their name maybe is not a traditional American name, is that going to be parsed correctly? Like, people have all kinds of questions, and so our outside board is really helping us think through all of those things. That's part of why we're taking so much time to really make sure we're testing the technology.
Yeah, great answer, Daniel. And to be clear, the use of image here is not to assess anything other than to verify the identity of the person.
Well,
So
you
it's
got
not.
it. And in a way, what we're seeing out there right now, absent these technologies, like, actually is a little bit worse. Like, I've heard of customers asking a job seeker to show their driver's license during an interview to prove they're who they say they are, which,
Yep.
if you think about it, now you're seeing their date of birth, you're seeing a picture of their photo ID, like maybe that's stored somewhere. So it's not like the current situation is a perfect Eden. And I think a lot of ways we can improve on what's there today from a fairness and from an anti-bias standpoint as well.
Absolutely. I've had that anecdote as well, where people have encountered a fraud case. So it was actually a fake candidate, and they have now switched to a situation where on a Zoom call they're saying, "Look, we need you to stick your ID in on camera." And I'm thinking that's kind of a suboptimal situation, but you can understand why the employer has asked for them to do that. We obviously need to have a technology solution that's secure, and less subject to abuse. Okay, very, very good. What else are you doing to basically improve candidate experience? Before we bring on our wonderful guest panelists, which we're going to sort of join the conversation, I still want to just double down on what's happening on vendor side. So what has been built in Greenhouse that is candidate focused, that's going to, bump up the candidate experience and make them, feel as if they're participants in this process as collaborators?
And that's the key. And that's the key thing, is we kind of realized at some point along the way that, as I said at the outset, our mission is to help companies be great at hiring. We kind of realized we can't do that successfully without addressing job seeker problems. That it's not enough to be working on the hiring process itself, because, as we've talked about, like, job seekers are critical to this process, and they're feeling this process isn't working for them either. And so with that in mind, in addition to Real Talent, which you talked about, we released earlier this year My Greenhouse. So that is a candidate portal that job seekers use when they're applying to a job at a Greenhouse customer. And it helps them make the process easier with things like they can save and auto apply their information with one click, which makes it nice. What it really does is give them a way to better focus their job search in ways that are going to work for them. So a couple examples of what my greenhouse is able to do for a job seeker. Number one is they can subscribe to job alerts. Our data shows that the earlier you are applying for a new job, the more likely you are to even be seen by a recruiter and get a fair chance of being evaluated. So by subscribing to a job alert, those applicants get notified as soon as a job is open that they're interested in. They can apply sooner. They can find out more easily about jobs that are relevant to them. So that's one thing. The other is a feature we released called Dream Job. And this is a way for job seekers to indicate once a month which job out of all the jobs that they've applied to is the one they're the most interested in. And why is that important? Because in a sea of job applications where it's getting easier and easier to apply for jobs, candidates are applying for hundreds or even thousands of jobs every time they go to the market. How do you stand out? And just like early application to college or the super like on a dating app, this is sort of a scarce token you have. You only get one of them a month. And by telling that employer, hey, this is the one I'm using, it gives them a really meaningful signal that this job seeker thinks this is a job they're a good fit for. They're likely to get it. They really want it. And so they show up on the employer side at the top of the list, right?
I love this. This is exactly right. So I was going to ask you the question, is that signaled on the employer side? I mean, isn't that great, folks? I mean, suddenly you get a hyper motivated candidate. That's
Yeah.
actually one of the biggest problems when you have sort of too many candidates. What is the casual application? These days, you've got tools that enable candidates to apply to 1,000 jobs a day. Like, actually, I don't want that guy. I want the person who's really interested.
That's right. And to be
So
clear, I don't begrudge job seekers doing that. They're just trying to get a job. So if they're submitting, big
correct.
bulk, like I get why they're doing that and I empathize. But at the same time, it's a collective problem where if everybody's doing that, which they are, it makes it hard for anyone to stand out. And so I think that deal with this dream job is exactly like you said. This is now someone you want to talk to. And what we've seen already, just early days since we've released this feature, thousands of people have used it. Hundreds of people have gotten their dream job already on the platform, which is really exciting because we think like behind every feature we release, behind every number we look at Greenhouse, there's someone trying to get a job. So these are really meaningful moments to them. But they've converted at about 4 times the efficiency of your average job applicant, right? So if you think
Yeah.
about your inbound funnel and what are the chances that any one person to get hired, the dream job applicants are about 4 times more likely to get hired than everyone else, which is I think a great signal that it's working, it's helping the right people get noticed and get hired, which is what we're trying to do.
Right, and we'd actually completely missed that signal if it wasn't there. Like that person
Right.
would be buried amongst all the other applicants.
There
So,
are
so I
2,000 in
totally
line
get
at the
it.
deli, like you're not going to get to them.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, also very good marketing juice. I can't help think, you know what, you can actually advertise that as, hey, this said person got a dream job to buy a greenhouse. So potentially there's mileage there as well. Okay, great stuff. Wonderful to see you invest into that side of the product, Dan. That's fantastic stuff. Let's bring on some of our guests here and have a chat with them to see where the general landscape is with candidate experience. What is the ghosting challenge? What is the applicant tsunami, and how the operators are also handling this issue? So I'm going to bring on some of our wonderful guests here in right now, as a matter of fact. Oh,
Yeah,
I've
let's
just got
hear
to
from
type.
some real experts.
I've got to type their names here. There's Kevin. Haven't seen Kevin for a while, so this would be good. Let's get Bradley on. By the way, folks, if you've got any questions for Dan or any of the panelists, do use the Q&A feature on the right-hand side of the chat there. We're going to get to them at the end of the show. Cheryl here as well. Great stuff. Okay, Bradley, Cheryl, and Kevin, you should all have received a notification on the front of your screen saying accept, and you have
How
been
we doing?
indeed, which is great. Fantastic. Kevin, wonderful to see you. Bradley, wonderful to see you as well. Whilst we're waiting for Cheryl to come on, why don't we do some quick intros? Kevin, for the people who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi, Hung. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Bradley. How we doing?
Hey.
So my name is Kevin Grossman, and I run the Candidate Experience Awards and Benchmark Research Program. Been running that for going on 11 years. And we're actually now part of Surveil, who has been our survey technology platform for the past 9 years already. So that's what I do.
Fantastic stuff. And it's a widely reputed as the kind of number one sort of report for the state of candidate experience. So if you haven't received a copy of that report, do avail yourself with it. Kevin, if there's a sort of a link for the last report, you might want to share that in the,
Sure.
feel free to share that in the chat. And I think people need to complete the survey as well. So, if there's new stuff there, go ahead. Bradley,
Yeah.
great to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself, Bradley?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you and be on this conversation. And I'm the AVP of Technology for Sasser Workforce Solutions. Essentially, we service the retail industry, and we do that by creating unique teams to help with remodel, new store openings, and kind of everything in between. And we do it out of one office in North Carolina, and our people work nationwide. So we've been remote hiring for 20 years, back on Excel spreadsheets and phone calls, and now we are technology enabled to do it as one team locally. So.
Fantastic to have you on the show, Bradley. And we have Cheryl here as well. Cheryl Peterson, wonderful to have you on. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, audio is
so
great.
Glad to be joining everyone. So I'm Cheryl Peterson, and I'm the Global Head of Candidate Experience over at Europe, and we are a engineering consulting design firm. We have over 20,000 employees across the world, over 40 different offices. So really excited to be joining the panel today and kind of taking the expertise that I've had over my 30 plus years of experience, not to date myself, and just seeing this evolving candidate landscape and just what AI is doing to that. So I'm responsible for helping to support Europe with putting some practices in place that are more globally consistent for our candidates, looking at the implementation of and enabling that through technology, but also making sure that we're maintaining a human-centric approach.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Great to have you on the show, everybody. Kevin, let's start with you. You might as well tell us, the state of the candidate experience marketplace. Can you explain sort of what the scale of the report is, firstly, and what are the key trends that we need to be aware of in the recruitment space?
So for over the past 14 years now, we've surveyed for a tiny research group nearly 2 million candidates. And this year, the scope of research was nearly 70,000 global candidates that were surveyed. That will be out. The 2025 reports will be out later this year, before the end of the year. It's a hot mess right now out there, and I think, and a lot of what Daniel, what you were sharing as well. I mean, right now, what I would argue from a candidate's perspective, going back to the .com demise and the Great Recession and COVID, this is the worst candidate market that is, in my recent experience in the past 25 years, from their perspective, especially. Yeah. It's taking a lot longer even for professional and management hires to find work. Number one, hiring has cooled across industries around the world. It's very frustrating, and candidate resentment, as we measure it, is actually higher than it's ever been across regions: North America, EMEA, APAC, Latin America. And candidates, one of the top 3 negative comment sentiments that we found this year, and even last, actually, is they believe that AI is selecting them out. And they believe that. Now, they've always railed against automation, right? But everything that happens, even the knockout questions, anything that may or may not be related to AI, at the point of application, if they're deemed unqualified and they got that rejection note, AI is selecting me out. And we know majority of employers, at least in our data too, majority of employers, and Bradley and Cheryl can attest to their own organizations, we're not really using AI to screen yet, not full born. So there's a lot of misinformation and misconception, but it's a really crappy market for candidates.
Yeah, really good overview. And of course, the global macro doesn't help. Like economic insecurity is obviously everyone feels it. And it's, totally different experience to be applying for jobs and looking for jobs whenever, it's doom out there, compared to what it was in 2021, where, people were charging ahead, being very happy applying for jobs because it usually meant, 25% increase in salary. So the global macro doesn't help, and the AI sort of perception doesn't help. I guess the direct experience, the real experience of sitting in queue for a long period of time, often getting no result, that is also a reality as well. Okay. actually, before I go to Bradley and Cheryl, Kevin, tell us what about the candidate resentment score. I love this metric. So my most favorite metric in recruitment. Tell us what that is and where we're at with it.
So the way that we measure it, we have lots of ratings that we capture from the candidates, but out of the 4 key ratings that we do a lot of relationships in our analysis and our research every year, one of the questions is, how likely are you, dear candidate, to change your relationship status with us, the employer, based on your experience? And it's a simple 4-point scale that goes from, I had a great experience overall, I will continue to engage your business and your brand, whatever that means to me. So if you were a consumer-based organization, that could mean customer behavior, applying again, referring, brand advocacy, all of those things. The other end of the scale is, I had a really bad experience, I'm done. I don't want to do anything with you anymore. And while not everybody puts their money where their mouth is, we know that if you project that percentage, and for example, this year, and because it seems like it's a relatively smaller percentage, like in North America, it's 15% of the candidates. EMEA, it was 17%. And respectively, and then similar in APAC and Latin America. But if you project that out to all candidates around the world, there's could potentially be a significant bite out of business and brand. And there's a whole bunch of folks on the fence that aren't as definitive, but could probably easily tip into that scale too. So that is what we call candidate resentment, when they definitively say, I do not want to do anything with your organization again.
And can you tell us what the trend line is?
Trending, it continues to go this way, up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been especially, it's going in the wrong direction. Well, especially since even right before COVID, see, we started this program coming out of the Great Recession, and we were in pretty much in a growth market until right before COVID. Things started to rumble a little bit, but then COVID, the bottom fell out, right, for all the reasons that we all painfully lived through. But ever since, the trajectory's been up. Yeah. Even through the talent kind of hoarding on the tech side in 2021 and all the things that when we came back from COVID, but then the shedding ever since of candidates, it's been a rough road for, I mean, again, from a candidate perspective right now. But it's also, after one more quick note, in defense of all employers, including Cheryl's organization and Bradley's and everybody else's, whether they participated in our benchmark research or not, it is a lot right now. There's a lot of there's an influx of applications, like you were highlighting at this whole point of the show. And the fake candidates are on the rise. Although I think when I polled kind of our own candidate community, a lot of folks, they're not really sure how prevalent that is, but it's happening. It's a hot mess right now.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's unique now, we've always heard this in TA about this pendulum, right? That sometimes it's an employer's market, sometimes it's a job seeker's market, kind of depending on the economy. I think the thing that's happened now, largely because of AI, is it's worse for everyone. It's the market's just disconnecting, and no matter how many jobs are created, and it's not the go-go days, to your earlier point. It's not like the employers are thinking, oh, this is amazing, I got the pick of all the candidates. Like, it stinks for them too. And so it's just a pretty horrible moment. We've called it the AI doom loop, and I think we need a way out of it.
Yeah, really good interjection, Daniel. And by the way, some good comment in the chat as well. I think Steve Rothberg made a very sort of significant point there. It is the case that we can't say we're not using AI. It's probably not a good defense, because at some point we will, and we might need to. Because if we get like an overwhelming volume of applicants, it's going to be impossible to ask a human recruiter to go through it. And that's actually one of the challenges of 2025. Let's go to you, Cheryl, on this. We must be aware, our sort of very famous company, I'm sure people are going to want to apply to it. Have you seen application volumes go up? Have you noticed sort of some let's say an increased risk of fraud, or feeling that perhaps we have to protect our businesses that way? And how have you tried to handle it with the team?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing an increase in applicants applying. I think it's definitely on the early career side, where you're getting 50,000 plus applications over the course of a season, right? Because it's so easy to apply with the ATS technology that's out there, and to multiple organizations at the same time. What I think happens and what you see then is what I kind of consider too with where AI is coming into this. As an organization, we embrace AI. We use Copilot, but we know that candidates are using ChatGPT and some of these other technologies. And we want people to work smarter, not harder, right? We want them to be embracing technology. It's part of our culture at Arup, but we want it to be from a quality perspective, being transparent about it. We want to know that it's from a level of integrity that you're using it, and that it should be used in ways, as an example, to learn more about the organization and tailor your resume based on your information that is actually you, so that it reflects in the right way for an organization, so that as a recruiter, I'm spotting that and seeing that and saying that you might be a fit to Arup. Versus, I think today, candidates, especially on the early career side, will post a generic job description or, a resume into a system that allows them to push it out to multiple different employers from their career service centers. And then we're getting applications that are not great quality. It's really hard to tell whether or not a candidate is a good fit. So there's that piece of it on the early career side. I would say on more the engineering and technical side, we're not seeing as much of an implementation on the application side from an AI perspective. But we're starting to see a little bit of it when people are interviewing, to people's tailored responses that seem very kind of canned and that are more AI generated. And so I think that's where the human side of when we're interviewing someone, asking questions, probing for more information, spotting when someone's got a delay in response and things like that, and calling people out. I think also there's an impact based on whether or not a job is considered a hybrid job. Are you going to have to go into an office, and or if it's a fully remote job? Because I think you'll see a lot more fraud and a lot more of AI generated applicants and things like that when the only way that you're meeting them is online. They're never coming into an office, and you'll never really know if it's a real person or not unless you put that technology in place. So luckily for us, we're not seeing as much of that right now. But it's not to say that there isn't fraud that doesn't exist with, fake offer letters that go out for, with companies' names on it and things like that. But I'm hoping that, what we're seeing is an evolution of AI where, because people are getting, more exposed to it, they're understanding it. I think we as employers have an obligation to educate candidates on what we're expecting in terms of their use of AI. And I loved your example, Dan, when you were talking about the deli, and you show up at the deli and there's a line of 2,000 people. As an employer, we have an obligation to make sure that people know that they're actually online at a deli and that they're not online at a pet store, right? And so what is the job that you're looking for? What can you expect from Arup when you're applying for a position? We'll deliver on that. So therefore, please don't send us your resume. If you're just blasting every single company, please make sure that this is the right fit for you before applying. And if you're not sure, indicate that. That's all right. So.
Yeah, so some really basic good practice there, Cheryl. So you're literally putting it out there and say, please pay attention to to who we are. Make sure you know what the job role is and tell us what you're interested in. That's
we need
just
to do more of that. It's just an industry, right? I think there's definitely a space for that.
Yeah, so we need to bring back some of this old best practice that we might have somehow neglected as we've gone through, so many technical revolutions. Bradley, go to you on this. Applicant volume going up, fraud issue potentially arising as well, and yet there's a candidate experience crisis. How have you tried to balance those two difficult balls there in the air? Also a remote-only business, I understand. So I would imagine you're attracting quite a lot of candidates, to be honest.
Yeah, so let me go back about 8 years ago when I joined the company quickly. We were a very if-then algorithm-based hiring where a few questions would get you in the door. 1 or 2 more questions would get you to the background check and asking for a social, and you hadn't spoken to anyone yet. So we were seeing 20,000 plus people basically going into onboarding without a conversation. So there's cost implications, there's candidate experience implications there, where most of those applications, so 20,000 people, would end up translating into 1,500 to 3,000 hires or something along those lines. So over the last 5 years, really, what we focused on is bringing that human element back into the hiring process. So having recruiters that are hiring managers that are making the decision on the phone with the candidates, and then leveraging our technology through I guess light skill based hiring and questions through kind of a high volume hiring automation where they're kind of able to align their experience and skills to the jobs that we have. And that gives them a chance to, for example, say I live in Philadelphia. I have merchandising experience. I have lead experience. If there's a job available, it will serve that job up as the primary job for them to see, but doesn't limit them seeing all jobs that we have posted on their career site. And if they meet those basic criteria, the scheduling automation goes, hey, you're a great candidate. Here's our calendar. Let's get you on with a recruiter. So instead of having a very long application, instead of having required resumes, because a lot of our candidates just don't have that. That's not something that they expect in our industry. That our volume as far as what we're hiring and things have gone down because we've been able to align the job seeker with us a little bit better. And we are also very industry dependent on our hiring. So for example, working for Walmart, if we have a major remodel in a city with Walmart, that Walmart brand actually drives a lot of the volume because people see that brand and want to work with the brand through us. And so a lot of that is shifted. And where we see kind of the overabundance is our candidates will apply for every job in our system. They're trying to get the best chance to work because for them also just the nature of our industry, because projects come and go, they're looking for the next available project. So, they'll sit down and apply to 15 or 20 of our locations because they kind of meet the criteria. So once they kind of get the foot in the one job, and it's nice because once they kind of get that scheduling kickoff, that notifies us they have an interview and we can kind of consolidate and know that we don't need to review them for every single job that they've applied for. So
on that note, yeah, no, that's great, Bradley. Thanks for letting us know, and well done, by the way, bringing the human sort of recruitment component back. I will circle back on this, but you've actually generated a very interesting sort of thing to talk about, which is how do we deal with the genuine candidate that's behaving in a way that we don't really prefer. So this person who's applying to every job, we recognize the rationality of it. We even recognize the right of him or her to do that. And we're empathetic with it. However, it's obviously not great for us because we have to deal with so many sort of duplications of process. How do we make sure that we kind of reduce that behavior and we get that individual more focused to the jobs that are, best match, best fit? And not, I can just imagine this person being desperate and frustrated, applying everywhere, getting increasingly outraged every time. In fact, I believe the Mobley case was exactly that example, wasn't it? Wasn't the plaintiff? He applied to every job in the career side. He got an auto reject straight away, and that's he must be AI. And now he's brought this case in. So how do we mitigate, I guess, a well-meaning but misguided candidate job-seeking behavior? Any ideas on this?
I think just to go back to the scheduling automation that I mentioned, that's one of the best ways we've seen, because if your first job application through the screening meets the minimum qualifications for an interview, you're getting the link to schedule your interview immediately. So once you have that, and this is more of an assumption, but
you're applying. Yeah.
Yep. You're a job seeker. You don't know normally. It might be a week or 2 weeks or wherever in that time scale, because you're waiting for a recruiter to review your application or your resume and then call to set up an interview. Now, within seconds of you submitting or hitting the submit button, you're getting a notification back saying, we want to interview you. Here's a time. So you feel confident. And an example I've used before, if you start looking for the job and apply while having your cup of coffee, by the time you're done, you have your interview and you can go enjoy your weekend knowing you have an interview on Monday if it's available. So that's one way to limit how many job seekers applying for, because they know they have that guaranteed interview if they show up.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. And, I've heard people saying, one way to handle this crisis that we're in is we need to introduce a lot of friction. We need to introduce a lot of barriers. And excuse me, I've really taken issue with that. I really think that's the wrong approach, because friction, as someone who studied physics in college, friction is defined as energy that you waste. And I think that's actually like harming everyone. I love what you said, Bradley, and Cheryl, you indicated this earlier as well, is let's rather give people the ability to use their energy to help them get a good job and in positive ways. And so those examples, I think, are great examples of how you can turn this thing on its head and say, no, we know they want to exert energy to get a job. Let's help them do it in ways that are productive, that help employers figure out who the right people to talk to, that help job seekers get a job. It's not just making them, go through a bunch of needless obstacles to turn them away.
Yeah, I think if I could just add something too, I think, we've gotten to this point where because there's so many applications that we get and we're trying to get to a speed of hiring, which a lot of our organizations are pushing for. It's all about time to fill, and we need butts in seats so that we can make sure that we can deliver on X, Y, and Z as an organization. And so that leads to us doing a one and done type approach, I think, as an industry. And I love your point, Daniel, because it's not about creating friction. It's about having the right amount of touch points that are interactions, not transactions, that allow for more human touch, more understanding of who your organization is, who the individual is, so that you're making the right fit. And so maybe it's smaller bursts from an application perspective and multiple steps that don't feel cumbersome, but that take you through a process that allows us to kind of change the way that we're actually, doing our assessments. I'm a fan of AI, and I want AI to help my recruiters across the world to identify the right talent. But when you're getting 50,000 applications and you're trying to get that down to the 25 that are going to get hired across, or the 250 that are going to get hired across the organization, it's just impossible to do that in a one and done type way. So there's a lot that has to change, and I think it's on the employer side as much as it's on the candidate side as well.
Right. What's the tipping point of what ends up defining somebody as a serial applier, right? If we're talking about somebody that has some qualifications that an employer is looking for, which is going to vary across job type, and whether they need or want desperately a job, and they're applying for multiple jobs at once, but they continue to be screened out because your recruiting team is deeming them not qualified for that role, then at some point they become tagged, right? I mean, I know I used to joke in workshops uncomfortably, but it's true. Employers who has the banned for life tag in their ATS database, because individuals that continually just apply over and over and over again that aren't qualified for those roles. But there are a lot of people out there with Cheryl, what you were saying, the sheer volume that you're dealing with right now. There are people that are in there that need to be identified that could potentially fill those roles. We've got to be able to get there. We've got to be able to partner with our vendors, right, Daniel, better to be able to help screen and identify and get to those lists so that the humans can do their jobs. I mean, we've got to get there. And right now we're not there.
Yeah. It speaks to the ghosting piece that you were mentioning, earlier, Hung, is that, at the end of the day, we need to be able to find a way as TA professionals to balance how are we transparent, solve for the right problem. That serial poster, how much could be solved by having a quick conversation with that individual, pointing them to what is the right role, maybe managing them out versus just blocking them. Everybody on the back end knows don't talk to them, right? They're not the right fit for the organization, versus just having a very heartfelt, humane conversation with the person to say, I don't think this firm is the right fit for you. What are you really looking for? It's almost like I feel recruiters have become seen as more administrators and coordinators of a process, versus I have a higher aspiration for my recruiters to be advisors, not just to the organization, but to the candidates. You're not going to be career counselors for every candidate. We don't have time for that. But wherein you can find those opportunities as recruiters to help shape a better world by saying, hey, here's really your skills would be better in this type of an industry or in this type of a job, I think can go a long way. So I'd love to see our technology start focusing on that, where when you're not a fit for a job, have technology that pushes back to the candidate and says, here's some of the reasons why you might not have been considered for the job, and maybe these are the types of jobs that you should consider.
Maybe we should get some career counselor types into the team, because there is a sort of a disincentive for the individual recruiter to pick up the serial applier, because what's in it for that person? It's like, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna go in there and have an unpleasant conversation with this person. Who knows where that goes? It's not my problem. I'm gonna just ignore. And you know, there's no incentive for that recruiter to take that risk. So maybe we hire someone whose job is actually go and like speak to these candidates that seem to be applying and having a bad time, and you know, make sure that we protect the employer brand. I mean, that means carrying some extra. Anyway, Dan doesn't like this, so he's gonna come at me. So go ahead. So go ahead.
No, I mean, it's a creative idea. I think you know, I'm always thinking about what's going to scale, and I think what I heard from the panel is, you know, the technology could do a much better job of helping, which I totally agree with. If you think about kind of what's been in place, it's really just a mirror of what used to be in place in paper. You know, you'd fill out a job application on a clipboard, and now you fill it out on a computer screen, but it's fundamentally kind of not really that changed. But the market has changed radically. And so I think, who's to blame? You know, that job seeker that's applying a bunch of times, and you said, Kevin, kind of banned for life, like, they're not the enemy. They're not the bad guy. They're just trying to get a job. And so what should they be doing? Because the tools are telling them, hey, like, it's easier and easier to apply for a job. You're going to apply to more and more of them. And I think the tools could be doing a better job. And I say this as someone providing them, of giving them smarter options, of better ways to route their energy into ways that are going to actually help them get a job. Because let's face it, what people don't want to be doing is applying to jobs over and over, not getting them. What they do want to be doing is getting a job easily and getting on with their life. And so let's try to make that easier for them, and not make it the default thing that you just push the apply button over and over again, or automate that. That's not helping anyone.
Right. But when you were on the top of this show, though, Daniel, too, what you were pointing out about helping employers mitigate, again, the fake candidates that will continue to see increase in the years to come. Because that's just talk about friction, right, Cheryl? I mean, that's adding friction to the whole thing, that you're having to spend time to identify those so that we can then find those that are qualified. And that's just going to continue to escalate. I mean, in our data this year and last, actually, less than 3% of the candidates admitted, I guess I'll say it this way, that they use an AI application platform. Less than 3%. That maybe that's very underreported at the end of the day. That's only going to increase. But then all of the bot farms and individuals and organizations trying to disrupt employers and set up fake employers themselves that are mimicking Lilly, for example, and people are applying to that and they're getting their information. I mean, we got to, how are we going to mitigate all that too, right? At the same time.
I've just had a terrible thought, guys, but I'll share it with you. Basically, like you could do some anti-competitive behavior with some of this automated applications, couldn't you? Like, let's say let's your competitor says, you know what, I want to disrupt their talent pipeline. It's a digital denial of service. I want to set up a bunch of bots. I'm going to stick them all on like auto apply, just apply to every job, and then suddenly you'd ruin. You know, you'd basically inject inefficiency into your competitor. So there's obviously a terrible thing. No one should do that. But I can imagine someone doing it. In which case we have to have a mitigation against this.
I agree with your analysis. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
don't do this. But it brings back to Steve's question, which will answer now, because he said that actually it's not just the perception it's not a false perception from candidates that employers are using AI to screen out, because some of us are using AI to screen out, and probably all of us will at some point. So probably we're going to make a mistake if we deny it, because the reality is going to catch up with it, and we don't want to be in a position where we have to change the story down the track. Right. So how do we craft the message to say, yes, we are using technology to screen candidates, but this is why we need to do it? Has anyone got any experience of doing that, and what are your thoughts?
I mean, we haven't published anything, but I think what we're starting to talk about is that there's a difference between automation, which is what many of us do behind the scenes, and what is actually considered artificial intelligence, which is replacing human interaction, or replacing the way that humans think, and that's the human decision making, right? And so we're not at that like AI stage here at Arup today. Obviously, we are exploring vendors. We're looking for these opportunities, whether it be assessments and things like that. So I can't speak to like what are we actually saying, because we don't have to say that we're using AI, because we're not. we're using automation. We have automated scheduling. There's a human decision way, involved in that process. We're just automating the links that go out to candidates to actually schedule themselves and things like that. So I think that speaks to some of the perception, is clearing up the perception of, what is your candidate process? Kevin, we've talked about this on our different conversations that we've had of, let's get more transparent as organizations on what is your process, what can candidates expect. Maybe there is more use of chatbots that, a candidate can ask a quick question. What can I expect as next steps in the process? And being able to serve that up for candidates. So I think there's a bit more of that we'll be, exploring and doing at Arup.
What we've found is that if candidates could care less about the tech, because all they care about is getting hired.
Right.
They just want the job. If the technology is helping them move along in the process and communicate with them, and they are feeling engaged, then there's a positive sentiment bump. The moment they're told no is when the negative skew happens. Even if they felt like it was their perception of fairness was there, and okay, I'm bummed they didn't go any farther, but it was fair overall. What most of the employers that we've been working with now are actually, what they're trying to do is just mitigate that misconception that they are using AI for screening.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that will change, right? And then how we're going to address that. There's just trying to, whether they're putting a pop-up on the application or it's on the career side in candidate communications, we are humans reviewing your application. They're trying to address it that way.
Yeah.
But the train's left the station, kids. It ain't coming
I was going to say that strikes me as a terrible thing to try right now, because how out of date is that going to be?
But they're not using AI right now, right? Not yet. So at some point that's going to have to change. But they're trying to mitigate it that way, because anyway. So I hear you, because it will change.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And ironically, people have been speculating for years on the internet that I even saw someone in the commentary, I want to make my, resume like ATS AI friendly so I can get through the bot. And, folks like me and others have been saying, like, that's how it works. There's no bot. And like, ironically, like, I think to your point, Kevin, like, that's going to come more and more, where technology is going to play a role in like kind of pre-assessing and ordering the inbox. And so I do think that some clarity on the part of employers and on the part of the vendors that support them to say, here's literally what we did write this on Greenhouse website. Here's what happens after your resume hits the apply button. And here's the steps that it goes through. And I think providing that level of clarity, Kevin, I was curious when you said, where the negativity comes in is where they get told no, because I always perceive it as the real negativity is when they don't hear it all, is when they get that ghosting and they just never hear back.
Well, that to me, that's inextricably linked to being told no, because it's the phantom no, because if they're not hearing back again, more than likely that, I mean, a quick example of an extreme of this is that one of the workshops I've given in the past, a recruiter came up to me during the break and she showed me her phone and she said, read this. So I read it, and it was a standard templated rejection email that she had received. She goes, I got this today from a job I applied for a year and a half ago.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody was clearing out the cache, dispositioning in mass. That happens. I know, but so I hear you on that. The ghosting is definitely horrible, but that, and eventually that becomes equated. And even I would double down on that resentment if I don't hear back at all. And it's probably a no, obviously.
Miserable. It's miserable.
Yeah.
Well, if I can jump in too, and I want to take it from an employee perspective, because within our industry, because it's all project based, they're using their mobile application. They're doing a job search internally once they're an employee to look for the next open project. So we still face that same candidate negative sentiment with our employees, because even internally, even though they're hired, they're still candidates at some point.
Yeah.
And it's a little more streamlined as they move to the process, as far as we can send them details or they show their interest. But we have to be just as careful there of letting people sit in those statuses, right? So if somebody's interested, if we don't work the box, basically, it's just like ghosting them. I've applied for multiple jobs. I never get one. I got hired 6 months ago. So what I'm thinking of now is the ways that we're using automation. There's some opportunity for us to use some of more regular AI, not so much generative AI yet, to start engaging with those folks, and also folks that are sitting in our system that haven't been engaged, to say, we recognize that we're not communicating. Here's some jobs that, based on your profile, because we do encourage them to keep their skills up to date, their location. They can tell us what type of jobs they want to work, the distances they want to work. That's the best way for you to be able to match within our system. So that's a little more detailed than on the candidate side, but having the ability to start bringing in those conversational pieces to do that, just really digging work that a talent manager doesn't have time to do, to go back and work through the 100 people that haven't engaged with us in the last month, because they're actively engaging with the folks that are showing the interest on the jobs. Because that's to your point earlier, Cheryl, the time to fill. Some of our clients, we get 7 days to fill a location. Our best clients give us 30 days or 45 days, but so then that becomes a priority. And it's just having that same kind of thought process around our employees are our candidates, so we can set the expectation with our candidates before we even hire them of the things that they need to do to be successful employees. And that's what our recruiters have really been working over the last probably 6 months, and our operations team, when they get that handoff, is to really make sure as they're becoming that new employee, they know what they need to do as that employee to be successful.
I'm gonna defend ghosting in a minute, because
you've got some hot takes in this call.
Yeah, because actually the Mobley case emerged as a result of not ghosting him. But he got a rejection email, and he was outraged at it because the rejection happened too quickly. So we have this weird situation where it was safer not to say anything. So is there a scenario where actually it's the wrong thing to communicate a rejection, or is there a technique to communicate a rejection that it mitigates that kind of hugely negative reaction? As Kevin mentioned, there is a negative skew, particularly if it's an intentional application. If someone has looked at their own background, looked at the job, I'm perfect for this, apply, I get a no, I feel outraged. No one likes to be rejected. How do we handle this in a way that makes sense? I can understand why ghosting is a viable option, because it's just safer.
Well, just to be clear, the allegation isn't that he was rejected too quickly; is that he was rejected unfairly. The allegation is that it was
hundreds of times.
Not to say that it was, but that's the allegation, is that there's a bias in the algorithm. I think it's really good advice if you're giving good advice, like don't be biased. That I can sign on to.
Yeah.
Well, I think, as a best practice, we should never forget what it feels like to be a candidate. So to your point, Bradley, like when you're an internal and you're applying for jobs, like your candidate experience is front and center for you. I just went through that process, going into my role. And I think we have to remember that, go out to your website, review your job descriptions, apply to your jobs. Like, what does it feel like as a candidate? And what does it feel like if you got a instant rejection, or when you sign up for a job search and the automation and job search functionality is sending you jobs that don't even match your background and experience. So I think, for me, when I think about candidate experience, like part of why I wanted this role so bad and I'm so excited about it is because I have never forgotten what it feels like to be a candidate. And I want to make sure that, that continues.
I hear you, Hung, but they've got to get a communication though. I've had companies before say, I don't think we're going to respond anymore at the point of application if they're not qualified. And I just think that's a void that it's just going to add resentment and their willingness to not engage the business again. I think that too soon is too soon, too late is too late, but you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Because if you're telling somebody we're not going to pursue you any further, it always will be a negative visceral reaction. And that's a tough one, but I would still appreciate a response. I would appreciate feedback, but most of the time at the point of application, candidates aren't getting that kind of feedback. Later stages, maybe, and we recommend that, but they've got to get a response.
Well, hang on. This is where the candidate portal idea is perfect, because you can sort of, you can point to a place where all of the information is real time. So it alleviates the stress of having to, craft a personalized email. Everyone knows that's not going to happen. So it's going to be at best an AI-generated personalized email, which will also be condemned with time. But if you could say, hey, thank you for your application. Here's your candidate portal. Everything's going to be updated on there. If you have any sort of issues, then do please get in touch with us via there. There'll be a human recruiter who can speak to you. But there'll be visibility as to where it's almost like they've got their own little CRM of all the job applications that they're applying to right there. I don't know whether that's the case at Greenhouse, but that's how I imagine.
If you have a My Greenhouse profile, you exactly get that, and that helps. But to the point, I think as the guy on the call hung who both has advocated now for spamming your competitors and ghosting your candidates, like I'm not sure,
Well, we're not going to have a choice, right? The legislation is changing. Canada's leading the way. I think it's January 1st, 2026. You will have to provide a response to a candidate within 45 days. So to your point, Kevin,
is that a federal? Is that at the federal level?
I believe it might be provincial, but I think it's Ontario. But you're testing my global knowledge. Yeah.
But pay transparency, it may be something that's coming.
Yeah, there's states that are looking at it. So I think ATS providers like Greenhouse and others are going to have to address how do we make sure that we do that? How as recruiters does that become front and center so you know who you haven't responded to? Making sure, and I think Tiff put it in the chat, that you can pre-schedule so that you're not getting an immediate response, because let's face it, sometimes there are really great recruiters who are on top of their pipeline, and every single morning they wake up in the morning, the first thing they do when they get to work is they look at the candidates that have applied, and if they're not a fit, they reply back immediately and tell them that they're not a fit. But if they just applied within 5 minutes, the system can say delay that response, because nobody wants to get smacked in the face when you just applied and didn't get the job. So I think that we've got to stay on top of it.
We do. I hate to chat and run, but I do have to go to another call now, Hung. I thought we were cutting it at 10 Pacific time.
Don't worry, Kevin. I think we're running out of. I'm certainly running out of good things to say. I'm at risk of saying more heresies here. So let's put it there.
Thanks you all.
Thank you everybody for coming along to the show. Kevin Grossman, great to have you there. Cheryl Peterson and Bradley Cooper. I think it's the first time you've been on Brainfood Live. Great to get your insights. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful to have your inputs there. So thank you for joining. And yeah, Dan, listen, thanks for being co-host, man. Really great to connect with you here. And also, I think the direction of travel in terms of product development, I love the fact that you kind of you dual tracking it, so to say. So easy to just hyper focus down on the people paying the money. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure it's everyone in the recruiting process is included in the innovation.
For sure. That's the job at the end of the day, is you're helping people get jobs and helping companies build teams. So these are the problems we're facing.
Fantastic stuff. Final word, Dan, in terms of the kind of people that should be paying attention to greenhouse.com. What are the ideal customer base? Who should be looking for a demo here?
Yeah, if you're hiring and you think that getting the right talent into your company is an important priority for your business, like that's a great potential customer for Greenhouse. We have customers of all sizes, from startups that just hired their first recruiter to organizations with tens of thousands of employees globally. But the unifying thread is they all feel like the ability to hire great talent is something that they really care about and they want to do well.
Fantastic stuff. Greenhouse.com, folks. Dan Chait, great to see you, man. Thanks for joining the show. Hopefully we'll get some FaceTime soon enough. I'm going to be stateside a couple of times this year, so I'll make sure I'll pop in and say hello.
Always a pleasure. Bye now.
Okay, wasn't that great, folks? We could easily do another show on this, particularly as I think the controversies is a little bit facetious, but I wanted to talk about some things that kind of, there's systemic problems in our industry. So I don't think they're necessarily attached to, individual behavior. We have to fix it at the systemic level, so to say. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Everyone will get a recording of this video. It'll also be an episode of the Recruiting Brainfood podcast. If you care about this type of topic and you're interested in it, make sure you follow the channel. We do these shows once, twice, even 3 times a week. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody.